What's happening, everyone? My name is Russell Holiday, and this is the Nothing is Perfect podcast. And today we have two special guests for you, as per usual. But today they're going to be on at the very same time. So we have the one and only Silver Fox, Dustin Boydell. He'll be joining us at the exact same time as everyone's favorite Canucks highlights YouTuber, Mr. DeanerHD. We get together and we chat about the Canucks offseason so far. DeanerHD gives his take on the draft and the trades and the signings and everything that's been happening with the Canucks this summer. As well, we'll get into all the latest Canucks news of the day. So stick around and check out my conversation with Dustin Boydell and DeanerHD here on the Nothing is Perfect podcast. All right, welcome everyone to the Nothing is Perfect podcast. I'm your host, Russell Holiday, and I'm joined today by two handsome gentlemen today. Yes, it's the first time on the podcast we've had two guests on at the same time. We've got your favorite Silver Fox, Mr. Dustin Boydell, half of Rusty and Dusty, and none other than the man with one of our favorite NHL Canucks YouTube channels, 14,000 subscribers, 506 videos, and this season, maybe even before the season starts, he's going to hit the 7 million view mark. That's coming up pretty quick, so get over there, help him out. He's only a couple thousand views away from that. Mr. DeanerHD, welcome to the Nothing is Perfect podcast, brother.
How are we doing, guys? Hey, thanks for having me again. As always, it's a pleasure to be on this show.
Yeah, it's fun. We love the podcast because it gives us a little bit of breathing room. Most of the time when we bring you on, it's pretty cut, 15 minutes of intensity during the intermission. So we will be doing that again this year for everyone who's listening. 84 games we're going to be live for this season. We're going to be live for the Prospects Showcase, which should be around September 12th. We're going to be live for all the preseason games, all four of them, and then all 84 games. And is it too early? All the way through to their Stanley Cup victory at the end of the season. So,
yeah,
probably not going to happen, but we can dream. We can dream. Diener, how's your summer been?
It's been good. Just been doing the same old. Been working a little bit. It's no school right now, so I've been off of that. I still play a lot of competitive soccer in university, so I've been training for that. And also just come into the rink every once in a while just to play some pickup with my friends. So it's been good. And obviously with the World Cup in Vancouver, it's been fun to go out and hang around, and the atmosphere's been really cool. So that's been something. And yeah, it's been pretty quiet on the Canucks front, but I'm always happy to chat about the team. So yeah.
Well, Dustin and I have been wondering about your takes kind of in general, what's been happening with the Canucks offseason so far. And we can just your general overview. I mean, going all the way back, we haven't gotten your thoughts on the Sedins hire and Ryan Johnson and, all the different people that have been like Darren Hermiston and Richard Seeley and all these guys at the coaching staff. So if you're, I guess the easiest way to do it, like letter grade wise, if you're giving a letter grade to the Canucks offseason, what kind of letter grade are you giving to them so far and why?
Yeah, obviously I'm not the most well versed in, like the lower head, like the lower coaches and whatnot. But in terms of like the main things that they've been able to do, I have to say I give it an A minus. I think that for the most part I was really happy with the draft. That's got to be a highlight. Caleb Malhotra is definitely a guy that I'm pretty satisfied with. I'll admit that before the pick was made, I was probably more on the Chase Reed train, but I think the past couple of weeks of doing research and reading up on the player, I'm really happy with who we have, and just to strengthen that center ice position. The core is looking really good with guys like Coots and Rogowski as well. But the guy that I am most happy about from the draft has to be Adam Novotny. I think that was just a home run of a pick, and I really liked what they were going with there. And just sticking to like a theme of big, strong, fast guys, kind of like what the Florida Panthers run on. Like it's a really hard style to play against, and if they're able to build that brand and continue to go down that path, I think that it's going to be really hard to screw up. So I was really happy with kind of just like the approach that they took and the fact that they stuck with it. I know that in the draft you had the opportunity to take guys like Xavier Villeneuve and Mathis Preston, younger forward or smaller forwards, who, yeah, they have a lot of skill and they're elusive. But, like down the line in the playoffs, when you want to compete, who would you rather have, Mathis Preston or Brooks Rogowski, 6'7", 245? It's hard to argue with the size. And, for a guy that hasn't really taken hockey that seriously until, just the past 2 years, I've really been impressed with what I've seen there. Even Aram Olsen, we see like the stuff on the fitness tests and how he dominated that. It's a very good high upside pick. So, you look at that trade for Kiefer Sherwood, 2 second round picks. One of those picks was Aram Olsen. We have one more second round pick next year. That looks really good. The one thing I will say I wasn't the most happy about with the offseason was probably the Höglander trade. I don't think that you needed to make that one. And that's the only difference from, an A or an A plus to just the A minus. I think that if there was a year to give Höglander that chance in the lineup, I think that this was going to be that year. Maybe you could have looked at trading a DeBrusque. Obviously, the no movement clause is one thing, but I would have been a little bit more active to try and move him, especially since he's been a bit more vocal about trying not wanting to be part of a rebuild. And Höglander's a guy that we drafted, and he's proven he could put up upwards of 24 goals and has some pretty decent skill on him, right? So dealt with injuries, and I think that if anyone could have, strung him back in the right position, it could have been Manny, right? So that's always going to be one where I'm kind of going to look back on that, kind of like the Podkolzin trade, where you just didn't really have to do it. But at the same time, if the player talked to Ryan Johnson and they conversed about it, I could see a situation where they mutually decided it was best for the player to maybe get a fresh start. And if that were the case, then you can't really argue that if the player wanted it. But if he did want to stay here, I guess we'll never know. Then I definitely would have liked to give him maybe one more chance there on that first line. But overall, you go down the list, even the veteran signings, the Gallaghers and the Paul Cotters, Luke Shen, Alexiak, all those guys, just fantastic. Especially the Marcus Pettersson to Alexiak maneuver, if you want to call it that, to get a first round pick out of it, and a guy that's bigger, stronger. Perhaps could protect the young guys better than Marcus Pettersson would. The way I look at that one is like you look at Marcus Pettersson, he's 31 years old, I think, maybe 30, and his value will only will only continue to decay. And that first round pick, even though it's in 2030, it's only going to get more and more valuable as we get closer to 2030 draft. So we might not use that pick at all. We probably should, I think, hold on to it because making that bet on the Rangers, who aren't like a surefire team to even be a contender 4 or 5 years down the line. They could be heading down a rebuild if their retool doesn't go too well. So realistically, if the trade goes in a direction where the Rangers have to rebuild and the top 10 protection has to be in play, we could realistically be looking at like the 5th overall pick for Marcus Pettersson in 2031. Like that is kind of how I'd like to see it. And you make those big bets. Really smart move there from Johnson just to get that value back, because I know how many people were disappointed when Alvin traded that first away, which was the 12th overall pick. That's a pretty high first round pick. And you could have gotten yourself like a Cole Reshny or Victor Eklund, Kashawn Aitchison, one of those types of players. So to get that value back for Marcus Pettersson and to replace him with a very similar guy in Alexiak, who's probably going to be better in the short run, is just magnificent. Honestly, it's like surgical the way he was able to do that. So I'm pretty happy with the offseason, with all the expectation, like we weren't ever going to make like a big splash, and you never know what's going to happen here in the next couple of months as we approach training camp. But overall, I'm pretty happy, and I finally have trust again in a front office.
Well, Dustin, because I was going to ask you, because I've seen a bunch of lists coming out now, a bunch of tier lists. Everyone, obviously, it's the funny season now. Everyone's just trying to find content. And I've seen a number of tier lists where the Canucks are rated as like a terrible defensive core and as a team that everyone thinks has a really dark future. And like, I wanted to get your take on that, because it sounds like the doom and gloom is just hiding the positivity that me and you kind of both believe in.
Well, I can understand the doom and gloom if you just look at the surface level of everything and you look at, okay, well, the Canucks finished dead last by 20 points last year. Well, a lot of that had to do with injuries, and a lot of that had to do with a god awful coach in Adam Foote. And then you go down Highway 1 and you're like, whoa, Abbotsford finished dead last as well. And you're promoting this guy. And you and I both know how well he did with with the cards he was dealt down in Abbotsford in the new year from January on. I mean, to play 500 hockey when you're running 11 forwards, 7D, and none of those forwards are your top prospects. Like Ulrichson's out, Lecker Mackey's out, Ty Mueller missed a bunch of time. All these players that are your best prospects aren't playing in your lineup in Abbotsford, or they're called up to Vancouver and getting absolutely spun in circles by a coach who can't string together a proper sentence. So, yeah, absolutely. When you look at it from that, it's like, yeah, this could be awful. I know on a lot of message boards, you see people laughing that, oh, we drafted the coach's son, but oh, the coach won't even be here in a couple years. But anyone who's done the research into Abbotsford and what Manny Malhotra did in the 2 years that he was down there is pretty confident that he could potentially be another John Cooper, where he could be one of the longest tenured Vancouver Canucks coaches ever. And by bringing in this young crew of coaches, they can build that culture that they want to build a foundation of together. And including the players, everyone learns to win together. Everyone is working towards the same goal, and you build this family sort of approach to it. And everyone has each other's back. Everyone has the same message. And, you brought up a couple of great points, Diener, in Aram Olsen, I think might be one of the steals of the draft for sure. Our buddy Trevor Beggs posted the other day on X his results that kind of slipped under the radar from the combine. He was first in a couple of categories, second in Wingate, third in the 10-meter sprint, seventh in bench press. So like he's first in vertical jump. Like this kid's strong, has strong legs, clearly. And Russ, you saw his shot live, like an absolute laser, an NHL ready shot. So I'm curious to see what he can bring with his development. And then also the Höglander trade. I was at first a little disappointed, but I kind of saw it coming. If you look at the sense of, okay, we may not be able to move Jake DeBrusk, you essentially have to play him in the top six to get his value up, because he's not a bottom six forward. He just would be useless down there. Not that he's much help up right now. He's so streaky. Maybe with more energy and a better offensive coach, he might find his game again. But if you look at what Liam Ogren did last season, late in the season with the poor coaching, it'd be hard for Höglander to crack the top six on that left side. And I just think he wanted to go somewhere where he sees a better chance of playing more minutes. Nashville desperately needs some help with hard forechecking wingers like Höglander. So I think it's a good spot for him. And I wish him all the best. I think he's untapped potential, and I hope he finds it. But I'll be disappointed, obviously, if he does find it. But I do think that it was just time for, after the injuries and 2 years not really being able to stay in the lineup. I think he just needed a fresh start.
Yeah, Diener, I got to go down. I was out at Abbotsford when they were doing their summer development camp out there. And yeah, Aram Olsen, it was Aram Olsen, Novotny, and Braden Coots, who probably had the three best shots there. I think Malhotra was just maybe the next tier down for when it came to their shots. But like Novotny was the kind of guy, him and Coots were, you could tell they had some chemistry already. They were having fun on the ice. They were doing extra stuff together out there. And there has been some talk online on message boards, on Reddit, on that kind of stuff. Novotny is not going to college, right? He's already a big boy. He's already got that thick body. Is there any world where you can see scenario where he comes in, has an incredible camp, and gets a look on this roster as a young guy before he gets sent back to the juniors, or is that just pipe dreams?
No, it's definitely possible. I could see like a Braden Coote situation playing out. I definitely think that, yeah, obviously of all the players that we drafted, he's definitely the most NHL ready. Just a big body, man, 6'1", like 190 something pounds. He skates like the wind, and he has a really high level of compete. I really liked his attitude more than anything. Just that willingness to embrace any opportunity. You could hear it in his interviews. He was just seeming so happy to be wearing that jersey. And that's exactly what you want, right? And I think that those types of players flourish, the best because they, embrace the role that they're given, and they're just gonna play with no pressure. They're gonna play the way that they know how to play. And I could definitely see a world where he gets a sniff. Do I think it'll happen? I don't know. I think you'd have to really outdo a guy like Lekkermaki, who's really on his last legs here. If anyone should be motivated going into this training camp, I think it's him. And I don't think he beats out Ogren. DeBrusk obviously is a lock. Carlson, and then you have the veterans Gallagher and Cotter. Forget who I'm mentioning, Drew O'Connor, right? So it'll be tougher for him to make it, but it's possible, right? So we'll see what happens. And to your point, to what you said earlier about Malhotra maybe being a tier below the three guys that you mentioned, Aaron Olsen, Coots, and Novotny on the shot level, I think that's fine because Malhotra, we keep forgetting, is such a young 18-year-old. He just turned 18 just before the draft, and there's just so much runway there. And the fact that he was able to accelerate his development curve, that fast at the end of the season into the playoffs. He was putting up the same numbers that Michael Misa was putting up in the playoffs, over two or like around 2 points per game. And if he's able to continue that level of dominance at BU next year, he's playing there with Aaron Molson, maybe play him on the same line. I'd like to see them, come together for some chemistry perhaps. And yeah, that would be a lot of fun to watch as well. So with Malhotra, like I know, like I watched a lot of like the scrimmages and like the 3-on-3, and yeah, I know he didn't look as good as the other top guys, but no, I'm not concerned at all. He was probably the youngest guy there, and he still looked fine. So yeah, definitely excited to see how he develops in the coming season as well.
Yeah, for Malhotra too. I mean, everyone pointed out like the whirlwind that he had getting drafted. He had just such a long summer too, so I don't put too much stock into.
Yeah.
You could tell he was probably just jet lagged and all that kind of stuff. So I have high confidence. He seems like a really even keeled dude who's gonna do well. I mean, we saw what his dad was capable of, and I think he's
Yeah.
gonna take that kind of same mindset and move into and yeah. I mean, I think I even like the fact that he is committed to go down and play uni. So there's no chance that he's gonna make this team. So he can just completely focus on being ready for his university season next year, which is going to be great. And Novotny now, after the combine, they've updated him, so he's 6'1", 205 pounds. So he has put on some meat since the last time they weighed him in. So yeah, he's a big
Yeehaw.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
And then
It's yeah. Wow. No,
Yeah.
it really is exciting
Anytime you
to
see a 2
yeah,
on an 18-year-old, it's good news.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's really exciting, man. I'm excited to see how Malhotra fares against I mean not against because he's on the same team as him, but alongside Tynan Lawrence. I know that those were two centers that kind of went back and forth in the draft this year. They'll probably be like the 1A, 1B. So it'll be interesting to see how both of them do and how they progress this upcoming season. And as you said with Novotny, I think the sky's the limit there. Such a steal. He was supposed to go around 14, 15 in the consensus on elite prospects if you looked at all of like the lists combined. So there was a real consensus that he was going to go in that early teens range. I think I saw him as high as like 11 on some boards, which is insane to get at 24. And yeah, if you're able to get a bull that can potentially put up 30 goals, 30 assists, that's a huge win in the mid 20s, right? So I'm super excited about that pick.
And Dino, when you think about the other guy I was talking about, Coots, because obviously a lot of
Yep.
people are having him making this Vancouver Canucks team. And for me, I'm like, man, put this kid down in the A. They got the new rule. He can go down there. He can be the number one center down in the AHL, play all minutes, get 22 minutes a night, play penalty kill, play power play, get all the minutes. And I think, as you mentioned too, the ability to go down and play against men, right? The difference in the NCAA and the CHL, there isn't a lot of men playing in the CHL. You go to play in the NCAA, you can get that training against men. So for you,
Mm.
where ideally do you see Coots starting the season next year?
Oh, absolutely in the AHL. I think that even in the NHL, you just don't have a spot for him. You have Pedersen, Rossi, Hedel, and Ratu. Unless you wanted to move him to the wing, which isn't his natural position, or you wanted to move one of the other guys like Ratu or Hedel to the wing, which wouldn't make much sense either. I think the start is just, letting the top guys, the guys that deserve to make the team, play. If Coots is, leaps and bounds above the Hedels and Ratus, then I guess let him play. That's only if he's like clearly better. But if it's debatable as to who deserves the spot there, I think that you got to give it to the guys that are a little bit older because there just really isn't a rush. There really isn't a need to find some gem in the rough to thrust him into the lineup to try and just stay afloat because we really don't need that at the start of the next season, especially. So I'm all for taking it slow, not rushing it with prospects. I've always been like that. And I think that, for the most part, the guys that are in the NHL deserve to be there. I think that they've done a pretty good job of, slowly integrating a lot of the guys, to play sheltered minutes. And I think when it comes to Coots, he's definitely not going to be a guy that you want to see exposed like he was at the start of last year. It was tough to watch those early games against the Oilers because, yeah, they were just getting outmatched there. Him, Lecker, Mackey, and Kane were aligned for a little bit, which just didn't work. And that's not on the kids as obviously, right? It's on the coaching. It's on just the fact that they were put in that position, getting drawn up against McDavid and Draisaitl's line at times. It was crazy. So yeah, no, I think that let him tear it up, be the first line center on Abbotsford. I couldn't even tell you who the first line center on Abbotsford is going to be at the start of next season.
Should be
But
Coots.
other than him, if it wasn't to be him,
Riley
but yeah,
Patterson, maybe.
maybe, yeah, exactly right. But again, that's another player that I think is underrated. So like
Yep, big
he's
time.
like he's a 2006 born, right? Like he's still relatively young.
Mhm.
And yeah, no, if you could put those guys on a power play together, let them get some chemistry gel and with no pressure, like there's no pressure in the AHL. You can play to your strengths, and yeah, I'm all for that. Just let them marinate, let them develop. There's no rush.
Yeah.
Preach. You're speaking my language, Diener. I agree.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Riley Patterson. Yeah, he's another thick boy. He's 192 pounds, 6 foot, right? Like I said, he's 20 now, born in 2006, so he can go down and play in the AHL. And that's for me. Like I think me and Dustin both agree on that. If you can go Coots #1 and Riley Patterson as your 1-2 down in Abbotsford, and maybe Safonov is down there too, just to get his start at least because he has not played in North America at least in a long time. So playing out in the KHL, sometimes it takes a while for those guys to acclimate to the North American game. So it'd be interesting to see. But if that's your top three centers down in Abbotsford, I think you're looking pretty good down there
But you
for
still have Ty Mueller too.
and
Let's
time.
not
Either.
forget
Yeah.
about him. You got
Yeah.
Chase Wilders down there. Like
Oh
down
yeah.
the middle,
Forgot.
we're pretty set now. There was that weird age gap where Benning traded away a bunch of prospects, and now we're seeing it fill in. Like we're
Yeah.
catching back up. So as scary as a rebuild sounds to a lot of the fans that only see the surface, after digging into what we have, I mean, you're going to have Gabe Sherratt, who's turning 20 in time to go down, also play AHL minutes next year. And he'll probably play big minutes on the right wing. So,
Memorial Cup
hopefully,
champion Gabe Sherratt, you mean to say?
yes, exactly.
Yeah. Put some respect on his
Um,
name. Come on.
yeah, like we're going to be in good shape, I think, in both ends of things. So, Coots definitely needs to be in the AHL.
Absolutely.
There's no room for him. But if we were going to move a center to the wing to make room for, say, like a Ty Mueller or something, who did really good job in the games that he played late last year in the NHL, I would be all for moving Hedel to the wing, just to protect him physically. The wing is less physical. He's not going to take the hits that he takes playing center, hopefully. But yeah, he's probably the only guy I would move out of that spot. I mean, you're not going to move
Yeah.
Ratu. His face-off numbers are just too good. And one of the benefits is that Malhotra has like has experience coaching 90% of the team. So it's going to be easy for him to set things up, and then hearing the way that Papionu wants to learn from Malhotra, they're basically going to work together to set two lineups that work the exact same way. So I'm really excited to see what happens. I do think that everyone will end up where they should be for the first time. And that line combination you brought up, Dean, I think that was the icing or the cherry on top for me. Losing all faith in Adam Foote. Like when we were seeing those line combinations trotted out, I was like, what is this guy doing?
Yeah, I saw that in UBC when they were training in August last summer, and they did line rushes. It was DeBrusk, Pedersen, Besser, which I mean I know your thoughts on that one as well. Um, and then
It's just the same
Kane,
guy. It's the
yeah,
same guy.
followed by Kane, and then Coots and Lekkerimäki, which is just
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, it just puzzles me, but hey, it is what it is. I think they're going to be a little bit better. I mean, we found some, I guess, a little bit of a silver lining there in the bro line, if you want to call it that, right? So I wouldn't mind seeing that one rolled out at the start of next year, and then again, I don't mind seeing a guy like Cotter playing with Gallagher and Ratu. I think that could be a decent fourth line, and you know whether they put Lekkerimäki with Pedersen or Carlson or whoever, we'll see what else the combinations are. But I could imagine it'll be one of those you know sort of things that they do on the right side, and then the left side you got DeBrusk and O'Connor. Probably just stick them on the first. Yeah, DeBrusk on the first, and then O'Connor on the third line. I think that the lineup is pretty predictable as to what makes sense, but I guess we'll see what Manny has in store as well.
For sure. And
Yeah.
like, you know, we're still circling around the doom and gloom that Russ had brought up, but like this is why we feel more confident because of Manny and things. And the nice thing is for those fans that do feel that doom and gloom, their expectations are so low that when they see the product on the ice, they're going to be so excited and their minds are going to be blown
Yeah.
that it's going to be nice to hear the confidence start to kind of come back in Canucks Nation, because we know that when things are, even if we're losing the right way and the culture is heading in the right direction, we know how dedicated these fans can be
hmm
in this city, and I'm excited to see that build again and work towards that Stanley Cup, because I think this really is the start of our actual chance to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've had teams overperform in 82 and 94, and 2011 was the first team that really should have been there. But I
Yeah.
think going forward now, it really feels like the organization's best shot if Johnson and Manny are just able to build the vision that they see.
Well, the
Yeah.
only thing you could see maybe being preventing that, and you've seen a ton of talk about that. And I want to get Diener, what is your take on this supposed budget? Because apparently there's been some hires. People are talking about penny pitching. They lost the opportunity to hire the guy who ends up going to the Colorado Eagles, right? And they end up getting Ryan Papuanu, which is great because he's got an incredible resume. But
hmm
are you concerned at all about the lack of money being spent on the support staff outside of the roster? Because that could, at the end of the day, hurt the development of the young guys or end up preventing this team from taking the steps forwards that it needs.
Yeah, I mean I've like fallen a victim of, you know, letting this team kind of raise my expectations for no reason. But you know what? Like I think that with this staff, I'm just gonna kind of let them cook, let them do what they want to do, you know. And I think that um, when they were talking in the initial press conferences about having full autonomy over this team, I believed it, you know. And that's not something I can say about, you know, the past front offices, right? You couldn't really believe a word Alvin would say. Same with Benning, right? So um, just the way that Johnson talks to the media, it's just like a sense of calmness and a sense of, you know, like every move is calculated. And honestly, it does seem like there's like an actual vision there. So maybe it doesn't make a lot of sense to us today, but you never know. 6 months, year, 2 years down the line, we'll see this vision play out. And right now, I have no reason to question it. So why not let it ride out? Maybe there's a greater reason for it. Obviously, if you're the GM, you don't want to, play out all your cards and show everyone your hand. But in saying that, it is a little. I was a little bit surprised when I saw it initially, but that doesn't mean I've lost hope for that in that sense. I'm still gonna let them do what they want to do. Yeah, it definitely wasn't what I was expecting at the time. Then again, I'm not, against what they're doing. I think that I'm gonna trust them, and I think that they know best. So we'll just have to see it play out. But right now, I'm not that concerned.
Is there any players on this roster you think are going to have a big step next year? Is there anyone that you have the vibe that you're going to see them take a good step in their development and maybe become more solid compared to what they performed last year?
I think Wheelan is the guy for me that I'm going to be watching next season. I've really liked his attitude and the way that he's approached the game, and I think he's really fallen under the radar. I've been looking at like a lot of redrafts in the 2023 year, and I really don't think that he gets enough praise or as much praise as he deserves because I do think he is a very serviceable defenseman already. He's only 20 years old and or 21 years old, and I think he's done a very good job on a pretty poor blue line. I think it'll only get better with a bodyguard, so to speak, and maybe Alexiak if he plays with him, or maybe they want to go for a youngster pair with him and Buyam sometime later in the season once they get a little bit more climatized. But I think all eyes are going to be on Buyam this year. But for me, I think that Wielander is my guy. I've always been high on him. I think he's a great skater, underrated playmaker, and I think he can be a good number three defenseman on a contender. So what that looks like from a stats perspective, I don't know. It could be 30, 35, maybe 40 points if, all goes perfect. But yeah, no, definitely a guy that can step up into the first power play when needed. Probably lock down that second power play unit. Good right shot defenseman who's fast and rarely makes mistakes in his own end. Yeah, obviously not the flashiest player in the world, but I think that he does have the potential to be probably a 40-point defenseman down the line in his prime, right? So I'm really excited about him. If I were to give another name, you're just talking about young guys for this question, yeah?
Yeah,
No older
even veterans. Like,
guys.
is there any veteran
Second
like?
prime.
Even older guys, you can
Yeah,
talk about
I
older
mean,
guys.
there was a lot of
Yeah.
crap performances last year, so I mean, it doesn't have to be the young
True.
guys. If there's a veteran player that you think, man, it's time for them to take a step back and into leading
Yeah.
this team and getting some points, that's fine too.
Yeah, I don't know. Honestly, I could say any name and I wouldn't fully believe it, I would like to say Pedersen, but there's been nothing that, makes me think that it will happen. I really hope it does because I want to see that guy succeed more than anything. But at this point, I just need to see that confidence in him because, I was talking to my dad the other day about it. We were watching that video from Harmon Dial. Have
Mhm.
you guys seen it? The
Yep.
the Pedersen one, right? And
Yep.
man, like very good, very well put together video. If you haven't seen it, I definitely recommend. And you just look at the old highlights, and it's just crazy to watch. Like you struggle to figure out how that happens, and I really do believe that you don't lose that level of skill, no matter what. And we're like 2.5 years removed from that season where he put up 102 points, and um, man, it doesn't matter where Petey's at or how he's doing. Like I'm always gonna be rooting for that guy. I mean, he's on my wall for God's sakes, right there, right? So, I mean, it's kind of all I got here, right?
We're a
But
dying breed, Dean, but I'm with
yeah,
you.
exactly, right? So, yeah, I mean, I would like to say Pedersen, but we'll see what happens end of the day. I'm excited to see Paul Cotter and Gallagher. Those are two guys that, yeah, not the flashiest names in the world, but I think that they're going to be pleasant surprises for sure. I've always been, you know, secretly high on Paul Cotter. I picked him in fantasy a couple years ago when he had that crazy start to the season. I think he got like 10 goals in like 20 games or something, his first 20 games, something like that. It was ridiculous. He was going nuts, and he has a lot of skill for a guy that's mostly known as a fourth line grinder, right? So I'm excited to see what he can do. I was kind of hoping he'd take that 43, but I mean, maybe a little bit too soon, right? So I know he wore that one on. I know he wore that one on Vegas, right? But he resorted to
Yeah.
47. Probably the safer play, but I wouldn't have minded seeing him rock out that 43. So yeah, probably those guys for now. But yeah, again, like Linus Karlsson, Drew O'Connor, right? I mean, Drew O'Connor was probably the most improved player of the season last year, right? I mean, we saw what he was like in the first 10 games versus probably like the last 30, 40 games. I mean, he was like a different player. So you never know with these guys, man. We'll see how these guys shape up under the new regime.
Yeah. I think if there's anyone that can get the most out of these players, it's going to be Manny Malhotra. I think he does have
Okay.
that ability to do that for these players, and any player that has really, you saw it with all the players coming out of Abbotsford. They were all coming up ready to play. And you give credit to Jordan Smith, his defensive coach down there in Abbey, who's now his right-hand man up here in Vancouver too. So he spent a lot of time with the young defensemen and really helped DPD and Vilander and really got them to the NHL, I think, a lot quicker than everyone expected them to. So I do end up really liking that Jordan Smith hire, or I guess promotion,
Yeah.
because he's just stepping up from the AHL. But yeah, I don't know. It might be that as they say on Locked On Canucks, might be smoking that West Coast bias right now. But I have a feeling that a lot of people are going to be quite pleasantly surprised with how this team, and I mean, even to quote like our man Brandon Astle, who is a friend of the show. He's like, you're not going to recognize Canucks practices once you see Manny Malhotra running a practice out here, because he runs up tempo, intense practices that has these players battling with each other. So all signs point to sunnier times for the Vancouver Canucks next year, because it can't get much worse than what Adam Foote was putting out there for us.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, I mean, I was around at UBC for a couple of practices, and sometimes we'd have the visiting team playing on the other rink, and just the difference in how hard each player was skating on both sides. And, you look at the Canucks practice, they were just kind of screwing around for most of the time. They just kind of be doing like their own thing. And yeah, maybe for like 5 minutes, they'd lock in for a little bit. But yeah, no, I definitely am someone that's watched it firsthand, and then I can attest to the fact that it hasn't been the most intense. So I don't want to dog on the team. It's kind of like beating a dead horse, but yeah, I definitely wasn't that encouraged when I saw the product that was being put out earlier last season.
Well, Dustin, what do you think then?
Don't
Like,
say.
because last year Diener was talking about it, was Coots, Leckermacki, and Kane on a line together. What if we just flip it and we have in training camp, it's Coots, Leckermacki, and Gallagher instead? Like, I mean, what does that look like to us?
Well, not even Gallagher. I mean, you probably have him with like Ogren, right? Like Coots, Ogren, Leckermacki, like a big guy on the left side. You got a trigger man, and you got the hard worker down the middle. I mean, even that's a better line. But we've heard Manny say it already. He doesn't like putting players in situations that they're not suited for, that's out of their makeup. And no one is fit to a cookie cutter. Everyone has their own traits and skills, and it's his job to put them in the best situations to succeed. That's what I love to hear from coaches. And that's what he said in his first interviews. Everything has been much more concise and straightforward, and that the communication to the players is going to be the same. And you mentioned the practice intensity and Brandon Astle bringing it up. Like Ryan Johnson, he said that 8 in the morning is going to be the hard thing. Like games are going to feel easy. You're going to wish you were playing a game. So I'm excited to see the drive that they bring. But the thing is even though they run it with intensity, they still try to bring the joy of the game to the hockey rink for those practices, because at the end of the day, hockey's a game and you should be having fun playing it. And I think that was one of the main messages that I took from RJ when he was talking about Petey, when you brought him up earlier and hoping he bounces back, is helping him find that smile and joy again that we saw when he was, if he got pissed off, he was scoring a goal next shift. And then when he did it, he had that cheeky smile, and we need that back, and we need more of that swagger back. And Lekaramaki, like, the twirl of the stick. I mean, Manny would love that sort of thing, right? Like, have confidence in yourself, be you. We're going to see more of that flair back in this team, and more excitement and more smiles and more sticking up for each other. And those are the things that I'm most excited for. And you talked about Vilander as well. He's high on my list of players to watch too, because of the potential of him being paired with Alexiak. His skating, you see that his skating and the way he sees the game offensively, being a converted forward to a defenseman before he was drafted, like you can tell that he sees the game differently. And if he's allowed to be unleashed to channel that a little more, we could see a very elite right shot guy that allows us to maybe run two defensemen on power play one, but at the very least have two very effective power play quarterbacks, and allow him to tap into that side and have more confidence with that side, because he knows that he has a solid defensive defenseman on his line. And if, he takes a cheap shot or something, he's going to be protected. So I'm excited to see him. I'm excited to see what Ogren can do with some Manny coaching. Same with Marco Rossi. With Manny coaching him, I think him coming in healthy, the way he finally trusted his knee in the last 10 games of the season or so, when he was flying out there, was really exciting and really promising. So yeah, a number of guys I can't wait to see this new coaching staff get their hands on, and we'll see actual legitimate chemistry and cohesion, and and we'll understand why lines are playing together. Like, it'll make sense.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, Diener, one of the most legendary Chicago Blackhawks of the last 2 decades, Patrick Kane, has re-signed with the Chicago Blackhawks, a 2-year deal, $8 million a year. They got all the cap space in the world to spend on whatever they want. What is your take on the coming home party for Kane to Chicago?
Well, you know what? I'd love to sit here and say that I think it's a good move, but I do think it's a little bit of like a nostalgia driven play, to try and make it seem like the rebuild is going better than it actually is, because I am a firm believer that the Hawks have royally screwed up their rebuild. I really do. And it goes back to, when they passed up on Demidov for Levshinov, and now trying to backtrack by getting Bowen Byram to be your number one defenseman, when that should actually be Levshinov who's taken that step. It's just a lot of interesting decisions that don't really make a lot of sense. Like, imagine Bedard playing on line with Demidov. That would be insane. Instead, you got 38-year-old Patrick Kane playing there for $8 million a year. And yeah, I think Kane was a decent player on the Red Wings at 37 years old, but do I think this is going to will them into the playoffs? I'd be surprised if the Hawks finish above 25th in the standings, honestly. I don't think that they're that great of a team. I think that, Kane is going to put some fans back in the seats, especially with Bedard out for those first 2 months. What that's going to look like, from a day-to-day perspective and, game to game, I don't think they're going to be that good. I really don't love the move. I don't love any of the moves that Davidson has made, to be honest, but I think he's just a flawed GM, if I'm being real. Kane definitely, he probably could have gone to a contender for maybe like $4 million, but $8 million for Patrick Kane at 38 years old, kind of cringe when I see that. I know he's lived his whole career in Chicago and stuff, and it's great for the numbers and for the ratings and whatnot, but for a competitive hockey team, I don't love the move. But to be honest, they did kind of back themselves into this corner. As I said, so many blunders. I think that the only two players that I really like on the Hawks going forward are Bedard and Frondell. I don't even love Frank Nazar as like a top six forward. I think he's decent, but I think he rode on the coattails of Bedard a little bit as well. So yeah, Bedard and Frondell, that's a good top two in your center core. But beyond that, the rest of their wingers and their defense core, I just think it's been a huge missed opportunity. And, you got gifted that first overall pick. They're trying to do what they can to kind of bandage their way and, justify the moves that they've made. But overall, I wouldn't be too high on the Hawks this season, which is good for us, obviously. You want the Hawks to be as bad as possible because, man, once that 5-year deal ends, then see what happens. But I know where my head's at there.
Well, can you imagine?
I said he's getting traded here in 2030.
Yep. Well, he's got the full no movement clause at the end there on the last year, right? So they literally have to do what he says at that point. And if he says, send me home,
exactly,
the Canucks are ready to go on their run, right?
Absolutely, and listen, I'm not gonna be one that's gonna want to like trade the farm for Bedard, and I know a lot of casual fans wondered why we didn't try to offer sheet Bedard, but that makes no sense. Why would you give up 4 first-round picks that are probably going to be top 5 picks for Bedard when we don't need Bedard right now? He can do his own thing out there. He's only 21 years old. Let him suffer in Chicago, and then once he sees that the grass is greener over here, he can do what he's supposed to do. And I do think that Bedard is, obviously is a much higher likelihood of moving to Vancouver than Celebrini is. You just kind of cringe at all of the things that go the Sharks' way, and it's just terrible. It just sucks that everything just falls into their lap, and they have a really good team, right? So I don't blame Macklin for probably wanting to stay there his entire career, kind of be like that Crosby, esque kind of, to take that approach and probably build a dynasty over there. But Bedard, if the Hawks don't make the playoffs in 2-3 years, and they don't make any big adjustments, because let's be real here, Kane is not here for the future. Patrick Kane is here for 2 years, and then that'll be it. Who knows if he's even here for the full 2 years? He might get traded before that, if it makes sense and it's for the right price. You never know. But yeah, no, I look at the moves that the Hawks make, and every day it just gets better. So yeah, we'll see.
I just love that clip of their GM randomly being interviewed on the street, and the guy had no idea who he was. And he's like, if you were to tell us how good you know hockey on a scale of 1 to 10, where would you rate yourself? And he's like, a 3. Like, sir.
Yeah, that's pretty evident given the moves that he makes. And I'm looking at their left side, and I'm thinking, they could use a streaky left winger, Jake DeBrusk.
I'm of the mind the Canucks need to do everything in their power to collect as many New York Rangers and as many Chicago Blackhawk draft picks as they can in any round, because I have a feeling that all of those picks are going to be in the first 5 picks of each round, because those feel like 2 teams that are in, different situations. New York is still a pretty young team, but Chris Drury seems like he has no idea what he's doing either. So if you can snap up a bunch of Rangers picks and a bunch of Blackhawks picks, those could end up being very good picks, because I feel like both those teams are on the verge of epic collapses. So, get him.
100%.
Yeah.
Well, and 100%. Connor Bedard does not want to go the route of Connor McDavid. No. He just simply does not want to have that career. A very smart deal by his agent here. He likely would have got more money had he not separated another shoulder in a little scrimmage there in Burnaby 8 rinks. But $15 million is a very favorable deal to the Blackhawks in the sense that they can next year maybe go out and get a free agent to help them. But, there's just no support system for him whatsoever. He has to carry the entirety of the offense. So for the first 4 months, it's going to be pretty interesting to see how they play, because they're going to be without him. And Anton Frondel, I guess, is going to have to carry a lot of weight, and that could maybe be a detriment to his development if he's not quite ready to do all of that work. So we'll see what happens, but I'm sure that Bedard is not going to stick around for a Blackhawks team that may or may not make the playoffs ever in his career.
Well, they got $2.8 million in cap space right now. That should be enough to sign Jonathan Taves and run it back. So May God have mercy on their souls if they decide to run back that duo. So we'll have to wait and see. Who knows? Apparently they've been chatting.
I mean, they got a cool 12.5 tied up in a 4D, man. So
Yeah. Hey, I mean, he sees him as a number one, right? So I mean, I guess I'll take his word on that one, but I don't know. I mean, you know what? For a guy that's had concussion problems his entire career and hasn't really played any number one defense pairing minutes ever, I don't think. Maybe even in that cup run with the Colorado Avalanche, he was like in the third pair there, because they were just so stacked back in 2022. And even Buffalo has they have 2 first overall picks on their back end. They have some titans back there, and Bowen Byram, he was a good second pair guy, but man, I don't know why he's making the same amount of money as McDavid. That's should never happen. Like in no cap era, that should never happen. I don't care that the cap's going up. That shouldn't be allowed.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
No, it screwed the defensive market big time. That contract.
Oh yeah.
I can't believe the NHLPA signed off on that one.
Well, I mean, man, it makes that Hronek deal look just insane now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, his value is incredible. Like,
I know.
3 first rounders for Hronek. Come on.
Well, then
if we get Landon Oh yeah, sorry, go on, Russ.
Landon Dupont.
I cut you off there. Yeah, if we get Landon Dupont, then I would trade Hronek for 3 first round picks in an instant, and then just kind of do what the Habs did, do how they traded Dobson, and then what the Islanders did, how they traded Dobson, got the 2 first round picks, and then they got Schaefer, Aitchison, and Eklund. 3 guys perfectly in their timeline, and I could see us doing the exact same thing. It's a really deep draft next year. I would love to do something like that.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and then the question is for our old captain Quinn Hughes. Man, is like, I mean, me and Dustin talked about this. Minimum for him to re-sign in Minnesota has got to be 17, because he's not going to make less than Kaprizov. So
no.
But like, how does Minnesota?
But if you compare market value to Bowen Byram,
it's
got to start with
a 2, maybe.
Yeah.
Right? Can
right?
Minnesota make the same mistake? Because they did that years ago, right? When they signed their 2 big contracts, and it was 20% of their salary cap for a forward and a defenseman, and they're on the verge of probably having to do the same thing. But this time, if they had Kaprizov and Hughes signed both to a contract as big as we think is going to be, we're looking at like 32% of their salary cap in 2 players, and they are right back where they were when they signed Suter way back in the day, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Quinn Hughes is probably comparing his salary to all the A-list actors he's been hanging around. So, who knows what's on his mind. Singers. Yeah, exactly, right? So he probably thinks he's up there with the big shots, right? So, and Hollywood, right? So we'll see what number he comes up with, but no, that'll be interesting as well. I really don't think he's going to stay on the Wild, though. So
no,
we'll see. Yeah, no.
Oh no,
yeah,
not a chance. Yeah. No. When Bill Guerin talked about, nothing yet, you knew it was not going well.
They went for it this year. They're good.
Oh yeah,
they're a good team, but yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then you saw what they lost too, right? Like the Wild lost so many of their depth pieces, and they don't have any cap space to do anything to replace those. So, and they don't have any young players. They don't have any draft picks. They've pretty much gotten rid of all of their capital, because I think Bill Guerin, the GM of the year for some reason, is probably the most desperate GM out there, because this is a team who's made the Stanley Cup playoffs like 10 years in a row, and they've made it out of the first round for the first time in those 10 years last year. So I just can't imagine. Like, I don't know. If I'm a Wild fan, I'm feeling pretty nervous going into this season.
Oh, Guerin spent 2nd round picks like they're Pez out of a Pez dispenser, man. He just gives them away. He's like, oh, you need a 2nd rounder? Sure, here you go. Here's a 2nd round pick. And my favorite move that Drury has made, you brought up Drury as another poor NHL GM, is that he moved Trocheck, and that was the only reason that Miller wanted to go back to New York. So, God, it made me so happy. It's the best move ever. Traded his best friend away.
Yeah. Yes, especially when he had an opportunity to play on the Avalanche. I think that was the first offer that was presented to him, but he shut that one down because he wanted New York or nothing, right? So, it makes it even better for us, at least.
Well, then speaking of other, former Canucks, Patrick Kane, he's down with the Kraken now. But it seems like I don't know what it is. I don't know if you know, Diener, but like, why is it hard for the Kraken to sign players? Because they try to get Panarin, they try to get Robertson, and like with fat contracts as well, like big money deals, and both these players turned it down. Why are NHL players not interested in playing in Seattle?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I couldn't tell you. I think that before we came on here, I talked about how, I think that Seattle's actually a fairly nice place to live. I've never lived there before, but I've been down there, and it doesn't seem that different to BC, as far as U.S. Cities go. And yeah, I don't think it's that bad of a location. Maybe it has to do with like the direction of the team. I think that a lot of teams look at that, like you look at Panarin right here, and the option to go to Seattle for, I think it was $14 million. He settled on LA for 11 million. But with Panarin, I mean, I thought, okay, that's just like a case of a guy that's been picky with where he wants to go. He chose the Rangers out of every team. He chose to go to New York City and LA, probably the two biggest cities in the United States. So, okay, maybe that was just a one-up. But then the Robertson one puzzled me as well because, man, like they offered him a ton of money. And what did he settle for in Dallas? 12.5? 12
Yeah,
million?
12 million
I think
for
it
a
was around
single
there.
year.
Yeah, 12 million for a single year, take him right to UFA, and he's really betting on himself because his value is pretty high. He's coming off of a pretty good season, so he thinks he can replicate it, do maybe even better for no reason. Maybe there just wasn't another offer on the table. Because yeah, that's the thing. I honestly couldn't tell you why these players don't want to play in Seattle. Maybe they just don't see the direction in the team. They just see that they're kind of in that mushy middle, and no one that is being brought there, Panarin or Robertson, wants to emerge to be that number one guy that's being relied on to carry the heavy load of that team that's going to be required because they just don't really have that much else to rely on. You have Jordan Eberle playing on your first line. I wouldn't be able to tell the difference if Jordan Eberle was on your first line or your fourth line. That's how like balanced they are, but that's like an awful position to be in as well. You have guys like Capo. You have like the most random players on this team. You have Capo Caco, you have Chandler Stevenson screwing around there. Vince Dunn is probably the only player that I'd say is actually like a solid player on that team. I think that he's a good defenseman, really underrated. Other than that, there just isn't much star quality. And if I were to give you an answer, it probably comes down to just the players not wanting to be the guy. I think that Panarin and Robertson are good supporting guys, good kind of like 1B, second best forward on the team kind of guys. But do they want to be that, that number one, you're relied upon in all situations, get over the boards and score a goal late when you're down a goal? Yeah, maybe they just don't want to be that type of player, and no amount of money is going to kind of push them to be that kind of person, even though Seattle isn't that crazy of a market either. So I don't know. I'm stumped here. It doesn't make sense. If I saw that check and I'm going to Seattle, I'm not going to, some crappy organization. I think Seattle's not awful. So I don't know. I don't really have a good guess, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I guess I
Yeah.
heard there is a new tax coming in Washington. It's called a millionaire tax, but
Oh yeah, actually I forgot about
I
that.
mean,
That's a good point.
that's only the only thing. But at the end of the day, I've heard so many different people talk about, and everyone talks about the no tax states and Florida and all these different places like Vegas and stuff like that. But when I talk to a couple of people who come into my restaurant, into my bar, they're accountants, and they're like, "Man, for these millionaires, like it literally doesn't make a difference because the way they can structure things,
No.
the way they can put their money in different places, all that kind of stuff, they'll end up getting that money later anyway. So at the end of the day, the amount of money lost signing in these places, and even with the new rule coming in Seattle, there is no way that they're going to be making that substantial amount of money less going to these places. So as long as they have a good
Yeah.
account, like it really doesn't even make a difference.
Well, you know what? I think less for the Panarin case, more for the Robertson case, and I think we're starting to see this with a lot of other players as well, with like the Dylan Larkins and stuff like that, and obviously Brady Tkachuk earlier. Kind of like these super teams kind of being formed, and maybe he looks at that and he's like, oh, you know what? If I hold out one more year, I can go to one of these Florida, Vegas, Tampa Bay. I don't know who else is that favorable, right? But these players are seeing that they can kind of bind together to form their own super teams, quote unquote, kind of like how the NBA operates, which I really am not a fan of. But maybe maybe there's a little bit of truth in that. And Seattle, you look at a team like that, which is kind of like stuck, and they don't seem to be getting much better or worse in the next 5 years. I could see them being in the exact same spot 5 years down the line, and that's no fun for the players either, right? So no matter how much money you're making, right? So you want to win at the end of the day, and a lot of the American players, you know, experienced their first big win after the Olympics, obviously, and um, maybe they want to replicate that feeling in the NHL, and the only way they can get that is if they go to a big market like one of those teams that I mentioned, or like Minnesota or Colorado. There's like a couple of hubs that are really being stacked up, and maybe these other players think that they can hop on as well for a little bit less money, and it means they can have a shot at winning the cup.
Did you guys see they had a special event on the show Family Feud? So they had both the American women's hockey team and the American
Yeah.
men's team. And to start, I love seeing KK Harvey there. Obviously, we love the Golden Eyes. We're super stoked. KK Harvey representing well on the show and is gonna be awesome. I can't wait to see her in a Golden Eyes jersey. But the word that came out from that was Dylan Larkin was having no problem telling everybody in the building how much better he was treated by Team USA than he ever was by the Detroit Red Wings. So he was just running his mouth, apparently, which is, I mean, not all that surprising. But at the end of the day,
Yeah.
how long is it going to take for that Team USA group chat to be leaked? Because man, it feels like they all want to end up playing together, but I don't think they understand that salary cap thing's just not going to work for them.
It's interesting because, you look at that team and the timeline, and kind of like that Jack Hughes goal and how it kind of altered, what we know in the NHL, and it did create like this shift. And they just keep holding on to it. All you hear about is the US gold medal and the US gold medal. And it's awful, obviously. Um, and it's really changed the way that the NHL has operated the past, 6 months or so, with these players thinking that they can kind of demand whatever they want. Um, and who knows what's been said in that group chat. I think that it goes without saying that those players are definitely, some types of divas, and um, you know, we'll see what happens in the next couple of years here. There's been reports about Connor Hellebuck and stuff wanting out to go play in one of those southern states, and obviously the Larkin thing that you mentioned as well has just been all over the place. He got stripped of the captaincy, right? If I'm not mistaken, which is a tough look. So we'll see what happens there. Yeah, I feel bad for the Red Wings. That's terrible, because I mean they kind of I mean can kind of sympathize with them because we went through something similar. But man, you think about the old days when, or the old days like 2018, 2019, when we just got Quinn Hughes and all these players, and you think that they're gonna stick around for their entire careers. The Kachucks staying in Canadian markets and stuff, and just how it shifted. It's wild to think about. So I don't know if those chats are gonna get leaked, like some other files and whatnot, but we'll see. We'll see how it all plays out in the next little while here. So yeah, I
Man.
don't know.
There was just a little smattering of Canucks news this week. Obviously, we were waiting to see where Canucks training camp would be held this year. It has now been announced. Training camp 2026 is going to be up in Penticton. They don't have the Young Stars tournament up there, but from the 17th to the 20th, Penticton, sunny Penticton, will be hosting the Canucks training camp, which is why. And Ben Lipka had the same idea as I did. So it looks like the prospect showdown with the Seattle Kraken, which is going to be hosted in Abbotsford, should be happening probably the September 12th weekend, which is the weekend before that. And the other news that came out today, also from Ben Lipka, which Dustin mentioned off the top, was the Kalamazoo Wings are now going to be renewed as the ECHL affiliate for the Canucks. And Dustin, with all those signings we saw last week, this is a good sign, because it sounds like the Canucks are going to have exclusive rights to send players down to Kalamazoo. So it looks like we'll have a bit of a better funnel of players should the injury bug bite the Abbotsford Canucks again next year, eh?
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Like the guys that they signed probably 3 of them will end up in Kalamazoo now, once that deal gets announced and signed. But it's much better than you have cohesion in your organization, and you have all teammates playing with teammates and prospects playing with prospects that are all in the same pipeline. So I mean, we do have a rush of young prospects and kind of some weird 23, 24-year olds that we are in college and kind of don't know if they're going to be able to make the jump to the AHL right away. So it's good to have that ECHL component to have somewhere, because you can find a gem out of the ECHL. I mean, we all know who slayed the dragon, and I mean, went from ball hockey to ECHL to playoff hero. So that's Alex Burrows. So anything can happen, but when you have that autonomy to those players, it's good.
Diener, it's like we talked about before we started recording. We're like 3.5 months into the Canucks offseason because they haven't played any hockey since April. So that's like April, May, June. Yeah, this is month 4 already for Canucks offseason. Obviously, not a lot going on. For your channel, I've seen a few videos here and there. Obviously, it's been a little bit slower. Do you have any plans moving into August, or is it kind of going to be more off-season stuff, and then moving into September, that's when we're going to see things pick up?
Yeah, and I apologize to my viewers if any of you guys are watching right now. It was just tough timing because during the draft, like I had all these plans to talk about the players, and then I got sick, so my voice just wasn't really there. And by the time I got better, it was all kind of old news. So I still plan on talking about all the prospects that we were able to accumulate in the draft, because I haven't actually done that. The only thing that I have from this offseason is a Shane Wright video, which I honestly not really my best work either. I don't really care about that, to be honest. It was just kind of like whatever, they're talking about it, so I might as well just touch up on it a little bit. But yeah, no, as the season starts to ramp up here, obviously I will be covering the prospect games, because I've done that in years past, and that's always a fun watch, because who doesn't love watching the young stars kind of do their thing against the other young prospects on the other teams. And then, yeah, as the season starts to pick up here, I'll start to do some, mock line combinations and what I think the expectations are for certain players, and kind of like how I see the season playing out. I'll kind of like make some stuff up on the spot. That's kind of how it's always been. It's been pretty loose, no real like structure on my channel, but I kind of like keeping it that way because keeps the ideas fresh, and doesn't limit me to stick to a certain formula all the time. So I guess we'll kind of like play it by ear, see how it goes. But one thing I do promise in the next couple of days and weeks here is kind of like a prospect overview on especially highlighting the top 4 guys that the Vancouver Canucks are able to get in the draft, because I am excited about all of them. And I have made a video on Caleb Malhotra, but I wouldn't mind doing another one. Then obviously the other 3 guys as well. I think there's a lot to be said there as well. So yeah, it's going to be ramping up, and I'm getting that itch back to start talking about the team. It usually happens around this time, anyways. It's crazy we're already in August though, but yeah, and obviously with the season coming up earlier than normal, we actually have NHL official games in September, which is pretty cool. Yeah, it's gonna be coming fast, so be on the lookout, and yeah, I'm excited.
Well, thank you very much for sticking around to the end of this podcast with Dustin Boydell and DeanerHD. It was a lot of fun chatting with the boys and getting you all up to date on everything that's happening around the Vancouver Canucks and the Abbotsford Canucks. So, if you're interested in being a part of our watch parties, because we're going to be live for all 84 Vancouver Canucks games this season, we're also going to be live for 15 back-to-backs where we will be covering both the Vancouver Canucks and the Abbotsford Canucks in one stream. As well, you're going to have 18 games of bonus coverage of the Abbotsford Canucks. There's going to be special guests in the intermissions. There's going to be lots of Vancouver Canucks talk and Abbotsford Canucks talk. So if you haven't done it already and you want to be involved in everything that we're going to be doing this season, make sure you hit the like button, make sure you hit the subscribe button, share it with your friends, and remember that my name is Russell Holiday. This is Nothing is Perfect, and make sure that you make good choices.
Nothing is perfect.